Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm Michael Nolan, and tonight we're going to be talking about five albums that were either released late last year or sometime this year in 2023. Now, the reason I'm choosing these five albums isn't because they're the very best or the worst to offer. These are merely five albums that I have covered on this channel. Of course, I'm talking about Ozzy Osbourne's Patient Number 9, as well as the Smashing Pumpkins ATUM, Yes's brand new album called Mirror to the Sky, Metallica's 72 Seasons, and finally, Jethro Tull's Rock Flute, or whatever in the hell that album's called. Now, keep in mind, with the exception of possibly one album on this list, I still think these albums are fantastic. But are they for the ages? You know what I'm talking about. An album that you'll actually pick up and play regularly 10 years from now or 20 years from now. Because you know what? The best that classic rock has to offer has always offered us that, hasn't it? Now, as I go over these albums, I'll be considering both the strengths and the weakness of each of these albums, and then I'm going to give you the one that I think we'll all be listening to 10 years from now and on. Now, I'm going to cover these albums in the order they're on my thumbnail. All right, the first one is Ozzy Osbourne's Patient Number 9. What a great album. This is a great ass-kicking rock album, and it's got some absolutely critical recordings as far as the history of rock and roll is concerned. Of course, this is the album that has Jeff Beck on it a couple of times, as well as the drummer for the Foo Fighters. So what's not to like about this album? Solidly crafted pieces, all. The only problem I could say with this album is that some of the material seems to be forced a bit, like we need another couple of hits here, and they took whatever chord progression they had and turned it into a song. But still, a great album. Now, next up is the Smashing Pumpkins ATUM, and this is kind of the bugaboo out of the group. You see, I only covered the first release of this album. Now, you might be asking, what do you mean about the first release of this album? This album is actually a triple album by the Smashing Pumpkins, and it was released disc by disc. With the release of the first disc, I gave it a thumbs up, and I gotta tell you, musically, it's expansive. Billy Corgan has really done his job on this album, and the only weakness that I can think of with this album is Billy also crawls up his own ass a bit on it too. But that's what happens when you try to, from the very start, create a space opera. Next up, Mirror to the Sky by Yes. When I first heard this album, the first pre-release on this album, I couldn't believe it. I thought it would be the one song on the album that I liked. I found out that not only was this album a terrific album, but it was released with bonus disc primarily written by Steve Howe, their guitarist, the only original member of this band. If there's anything to beware of, it's that fact. There's only one member that most of us have come to know as Classic Yes. 72 Seasons by Metallica, the strengths are obvious. Their work on progressions on this album are the very best they've ever done. But one of the problems that I see with this album is the actual material. It's not very memorable. You don't find yourself humming some of the songs on this album, but definitely this album is an improvement over some past Metallica albums. So my only criticism is a little bit more songcraft could have gone into the formation of the material on this album. And last but not least, Rock Float by Jethro Tull. Now, I've got to tell you, this is a very improved album over past albums by Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull, and the biggest improvement is his voice is much better on this album than it's been in recent outings. As a matter of fact, the material is impeccable. The songs are well crafted, and of course there's just enough of a prog feel, a prog approach to this album to keep any Jethro Tull fan happy. But which is the album that stands out of these 5 albums? Which is the album I feel that I will be listening to in 10 years from now? Well, to me, out of these 5 albums, the one that rises to the cream of the top has got to be Mirror to the Sky by the group Yes. Now again, I gotta tell you, out of all of these albums, this is the one album I just knew I wasn't going to like. I had made several videos by them saying that I didn't think this incarnation of Yes was even Yes anymore. And of course, with the passing of Alan White and Chris Squire, I didn't see a future for Yes at all. But this album is magnificent, and it doesn't matter which way you listen to this album. Listen to the album proper by itself or along with the bonus discs, mainly written by Steve Howe, and you feel like this is as good in general as any Yes album. In fact, if I were to rate Yes's albums, and I might, let me know what you guys think about that, this album would definitely be in the top 1/3 of their discography. Now think about that, one original member, but somehow they've made it work. As you guys know, I'm not a big fan of bands who have one original member. Of course, he's not original member, but he was the guitarist when I discovered the band, and quite frankly, not even my favorite member of the band. You've got to listen to this album. He has put together a Yes incarnation here that has shown with the release of this album that they are every bit as talented as those who have passed before them. Again, weaknesses might be that they don't have the lyrics of John Anderson. They're certainly not missing his voice, but it would be great if he had been on this album as a songwriter, except then what would we have gotten? The album stands clear and present all by itself. It has its own identity, and of course that wonderful Roger Dean imagery on the album cover. All right, so here's my question to the tribe tonight, folks. I chose these albums because I had recently covered them, and they all got great reviews from me. So I put them in a top kind of tier list here, with only one of them coming to the fore. My question to you guys is, what is an album that you've heard that's come out recently that is as strong as any other album that you've ever heard in classic rock? And why do you think that it is that? Because I gotta tell you, Mirror to the Sky by Yes, and yes, I do have to say, this incarnation of Yes has shown they are every bit as Yes as any who came before them with the release. All right, folks, if you enjoyed tonight's video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps channel growth, of course. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, oh man, that is so easy. All you have to do, here it comes, is hit that subscribe to the tribe button, then tap that top bell icon, and you'll be notified of all my future videos. I want to hear from you guys on this particular instance. Oh, and by the way, I haven't been answering your comments. If you see that I've given it a heart and a thumbs up, that means I've read the comment, all right? I am keeping track, and I'll be back to answering those comments really soon. All right, folks, I'm Michael Nolan. This is The Bottom Line, and together, folks, we are the tribe, and I'll see you in my next video.